Good evening, Jennifer Brown. How are you?
What a thing to say. Good evening to you. It's not normally at this late hour, Jen. How was your day?
It's been good. I feel like we're usually like at the start of the day that we're having these conversations. So this is going to be fun. It might be the end of our day, but our guest Nicole Lim with us today, it is still only noon her time because she is in the beautiful state of Hawaii, which I'm very envious.
It is beautiful. Yes.
Sure. Yes. Welcome, Nicole. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Aloha.
Yes. So before we just hit live, we were discussing the many options of which this conversation can take us today. So for just a kind of anchoring point, no pun intended, since there is one behind you, let's just kind of start because you really like embrace and embody a nomadic lifestyle. And I think a lot of people want to do that, but maybe they can't for a number of reasons. And so can we just like start there and maybe even with like why or how you came to be in this nomadic lifestyle?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to say that it was kind of random. But actually, if I look at the pattern of my life, I have taken off like full years before to just travel the world. So in some ways, this current 5 to 6 year period of nomadicism, if that's a word, is almost coming back to my roots. So the year before business school, I took it off because I was burnt out from management consulting. And then I've taken like 4 months leave of absences while working as well. And so what spurred this current and very long journey is a breakup, like every good story starts. And I kind of describe it as like this mashup of Eat, Pray, Love meets Wild, as done by a queer Asian millennial. And it was a breakup where I was living in San Francisco, climbing the corporate ladder very quickly, and just had everything I thought I was supposed to want to have. I was living in the trendy neighborhood of the Castro with my boyfriend at the time, and just having dinner parties, like things that you're supposed to do in your 30s. And, I was super unhappy. And that part was really disturbing for me because I was like, if I have everything I'm supposed to want to have, like, am I just doomed to unhappiness? And so when that relationship ended, it was really catastrophic in my life. It was one of those like breaking points where I realized that the plan that I had been so good at, like going to Ivy League schools and getting top jobs and, having the life, just wasn't working anymore and maybe never had. So I decided I was going to go to the no plan, which was basically quit my job and put all my stuff into storage or get rid of it and let my fears guide me. So, that first year was like doing 10-day silent meditation. I walked the Camino de Santiago, which is a 500 plus mile walk in Spain. I had just read Wild, so I had wanted to do the Pacific Crest Trail, but that was way too hardcore. So I did the Camino. I took a much younger lover. I explored casual sex. I was afraid of psychedelic drugs, so I tried every one that I could get my hands on. I got into Burning Man, which is this festival in the desert for 2 weeks. And just let my fear guide me and just try things, including things that didn't work out sometimes. Like I tried to do free diving. I did free diving lesson and I tore my eardrum, so like being on the edge of your comfort zone, I realized is not the same thing as being on the edge of your safety zone. So, I wasn't doing heroin. Okay, granted, I was doing some psychedelic drugs, but people would be like, so you're just doing heroin and jumping out of planes, which actually I did jump out of a plane. But the point was to be on the edge of my comfort zone. And that included emotional things, right? Like having difficult conversations, being honest with myself, sitting in meditation for 10 days, that sort of thing.
Jenn, I'm going to leave it to you to pick for you.
Nicole, that's so amazing. And you have this book, The No Plan coming out, but I'm sitting here feeling very conventional, very much playing it safe. And I wonder, so you sort of, your pendulum, it sounds like you swung your pendulum like way that way. And then you realized the boundary there around safety and health, perhaps. And you pulled it back, I suppose, to something that felt perhaps more, realistic or doable, but obviously still retaining like all of the experimentation that you're really committed to. So I wonder, where have you landed like now? And we talked about balance as we were getting ready for this. And it was super fascinating because we think of balance in this way that you think of it very differently. So I just want you to like jump into that and say like, why you don't understand how we think about balance and how do you think about it? And, how does that achieve a better result?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I think the pendulum metaphor is a great one because I think I had maybe an ex say to me one time, very disparagingly actually, that I lived guardrail to guardrail. And I took a lot of offense at that. And now I'm actually like, yeah, I do. I think I actually really like that metaphor. And what that means for me is like, I am this big empiricist. Like I want to fully immerse myself in an experience and know what that feels like for me, so that I can come back and maybe go all the way to the other side. And that by knowing the full landscape, be able to then navigate for myself where I want to be on that spectrum at any given time. And of course, like maybe I'll pendulum swing over time. And so that's what I kind of learned about the idea of balance. Like as I started to travel, I was trying to think about what would be sustainable. Like, could I find kind of digital work where I could be a digital nomad and have the freedom of geography and time, but also be able to make a steady income? And what I realized was that didn't really work for me, both logistically and for my own temperament. So my kind of previous day job was very much in the corporate strategy world, and that's a very headquarter-centric role. So it's not like off in a cave coding for websites and things like that. It was like, you have to work very cross-functionally. So it wasn't really a viable option, and other sort of like digital work just didn't resonate with me and wasn't really an efficient way to make money. And what I realized is that because I enjoy living so immersively, prefer to be like 100-0 rather than 50-50 in two different worlds. So when I am traveling, like I want to be on traveler budget, staying in not so crappy places, but like wearing zip-off pants all the time and not thinking about like, do I need to get this email out? I need to jump on this phone call, but the Wi-Fi's like crappy. I want to just be traveling and be worried about travel air stuff. Like, is this going to make my stomach sick? Versus like, can I get this email out in time? And when I'm working, like whether that's on a short-term contract or more full-time, I want to be like dining in expensive restaurants and throwing way too much money at things. And, like planning amazing meeting agendas and making beautiful spreadsheets and writing awesome corporate emails on Outlook. And I realized that that's a big part of me too. As much as I like to wander and swim with sharks and try different psychedelics and do crazy stuff, I like corporate stuff too. Like that type A part of me really likes that, those challenges too. So for me, balance is less about this snapshot in time of 50-50 and much more about this, like, do I feel like all my multiple authentic selves and passions are being expressed over time? Even if I took a snapshot, it looks very 100-0 at that moment.
Super helpful. Like just thinking, Jenn, like I remember I took a trip to India and my first and to keynote, but trying to like see the country and the craziness of then getting Delhi belly and all the things that everyone had warned me about. And then turning around and coming back a 25-hour flight later, and being so depleted and so stressed out and not feeling like I had done anything well. And just the way we try to cram things in and don't commit to the 100-0
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. And it's, I know it leads to our burnout. And I just love this. I'm going to think about it a lot because it's just more satisfying in the way you've described it, but it requires, I guess, planning your life in a very creative way. That maybe we're not very familiar with. So I also kind of wonder about like logistical advice.
Oh, this is a great question. You might not know this about me, but I take so much pride in someone complimenting my organizational skills and spreadsheeting skills. So ironically, the book is called The No Plan Plan, but I am a huge planner. Like,
You have to do.
I think last year, like I had every day planned more or less from like March onwards. And it was I went a little too intense, I think. But from a logistical point of view, I have this spreadsheet. And obviously I've been in one place since March because of COVID, but it has like every day of the year, like where I am, where I'm staying, is there flights that day, is there land transport, what activities am I doing, how much does it cost, do I need cash, how much cash do I need? So there's a lot of logistics that get involved. And that's my level of traveling. I think that the cool thing and the important thing about being a nomad or living any sort of non-traditional lifestyle is that there are not many rules, and that can be really liberating or it can be very stressful. I mean, sometimes I get stressed out at boredom, which sounds like a really nice luxury and privilege to have, but it's real, and I think you don't really trade a crappy life for like a perfect life, right? But the context in which you go through ups and downs makes a big difference. So for me, it's like it made all the difference. I would say I still feel a lot of the similar ups and downs, but I'm able to do it in a context where I feel like a better version of myself to go through that. And logistically, it's about kind of like planning. I'm like a master at finding airplane flights, for example, and thinking through like, how am I going to deal with currency? Like, do I just keep everything on ATM cards and credit cards, or I'm going to have to pull cash out? And then, the important thing to all of this, not to sound very boring, is like making sure you're comfortable from a financial perspective. And that was an important step for me, of just like moving things to Vanguard, getting a financial advisor, and being able to sleep at night, that I felt like I was still on a path towards retirement. And I had like really clear thresholds. So like if my money dips below a certain amount, this is going to be like the trigger to go back to a more traditional lifestyle. And thankfully I haven't had to do that, but it is a real thing, right? And the last thing I would really say about that isn't a logistical point. It's because there are no rules. You actually have to figure out what works for you. So for me, the type of traveling I was doing last year, I think I was in Asia, Europe, Central, South America, Africa, and of course North America. Like I was all over the place, and it was very tiring, even for me. And I think just figuring out what you're looking for, right? Do you want to be in one place for a year, for 6 months, 3 months? Do you want to be in one place? Do you want to try different type of boutique settings? Do you just want to live like a local? All of those things are like, it's like a blank palette, it's a blank slate. You can do whatever you want, but it forces you to be very intentional about it.
There's so many things that are coming up for me as you're talking. And one of the things that I feel like, Jenn, for folks like us who own our own businesses, one would imagine that, and maybe it's because we just haven't created the space for it, but I feel like as someone who owns their own business, we of all people should have the flexibility and freedom
right?
to do all of the things in which Nicole is talking about. But yet, like we are tethered or chained to this beast of a business that's not even a hyper local business. Like both of our businesses operate globally. So there's no excuse for like all of the richness of what Nicole's describing. And I'm curious, like I'm kind of wondering, like, why do we box ourselves in that way? And not necessarily you and I in particular, but generally speaking, like why as humans are we seeking this like safety and structure and comfort of having that small space in which we inhabit, rather than having this like complete freedom and carte blanche to just do whatever the hell pleases you. I feel like that must be such an extraordinary way to live. And it's like, how do you get from us to you? Like, what does that look like?
What is that?
I don't think we're that different, because it's all about being risk adverse and comfortable with what we're comfortable with, right? Like, we like to live in our comfort zone. So in some ways, like, stopping traveling in March and being in one place was very scary and jarring for me. Like, to be back, I'm born and raised here in Hawaii. So like, to come back home and be in one place was really scary in a way. So I think we are all kind of driven to stay in our comfort zones and enjoy that security. So it's a very conscious and intentional practice to try to be on the edge of your comfort zone and get comfortable with discomfort. And that was kind of what I was trying to do in that first year, especially, of like letting my fears guide me, right? And not just like fears of like crazy stuff, but like, what are the things that really emotionally make me uncomfortable? And making conscious choices to take little steps to normalize those things, to explore it, and also compassion to be like, okay, actually, I've learned that I don't like those things, and it's also okay to not have to push on that area. So, I think in your situation, and probably most people's situations, I think the important thing to ask yourself is like, what do I really want to get out of an adventure? And it might include living abroad for a year, but maybe it could like include exploring like a nearby town even, or, so the idea of adventure to me, having trotted the globe, has become a lot more internal, actually, that the adventure and the adrenaline can come from a difficult conversation, or like being authentic and expressing your vulnerability, as much as it can be like rafting class 5 whitewater rapids, right?
Yeah. I mean, is it boring to suggest? I think, Nicole, you're humoring us, honestly, but I think I might say, Jenn, every day is an adventure with the work we do. I mean, if you think about, we would never say what we do is boring, like, ever. Like, I feel so, at the end of my day, I'm like this, with challenge and fulfillment and like just so many feelings, so many emotions. Like, it's very, to create something and birth something in the world. And also with Jenn, your work and mine, which is specifically around the adventure of our souls, like our emotional journey, like our voices, coming up against systems that don't want us to be heard. The adventure of that feels, I've often wondered, like, why don't I want to like take all that vacation because I need a break from what I do? But there's a basic like deeply, I think it's kind of an unusual fulfillment when you run a purpose-driven organization. You are literally creating your adventure, and it is an adventure every day to figure out, like, how am I going to help these people do this in this system? And then what is my legacy going to be? Because every single day you're sitting there thinking about, like, what am I going to leave behind? What am I going to create that helps this? So I just feel the level of fulfillment is high. And so it's interesting. I guess I'm thinking of it, Jenn, as we're climbing those mountains, like every single day we have the hard conversations, or we hire someone, or we try to puzzle through something that's so complex. So I guess that might be a piece of your advice, or Nicole, your framework that could be applied within the constraints that a lot of us have, to say that there is that adventurous spirit in the context of what you do every day. Or, I like that, because that's much more doable, I think.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Jenn.
I was just going to say, I think it's in how we tackle the things that come up too, because like, so it's, Tuesday as we're live doing this. And so Jenn, you and I and our mutual friend, Eduardo Placer, meet on Tuesday mornings. So it's the first thing of my day is chatting with the two of you. And even like in our conversation this morning, like, I got a whole 3-ring circus of something I'm trying to deal with. And so I'm asking their advice of like, okay, so this is what's happened. What's your advice? Like, what would you do if you were in my shoes? But like, just having that kind of opportunity to look at it as like, here's this situation I've not yet had. and let's creatively think about what a solution might look like for this, and approaching it in a way where it's not like, for the love of God, like now I have to deal with this thing and it's going to ruin my day, and being like all like ho hum and like really depressed about it. But rather it's like, all right, this is just something new in the business because every day is different. So it's a little bit of kind of what you're saying, Jenn, of like kind of that adventure. And I think it's how you approach the adventure too, rather than looking at every obstacle in a business as something that is going to bankrupt you, because Lord knows, that's not without stress on a, some kind of consistent basis for all business owners. But yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your take is, Nicole, after where I feel like we're like bringing it on like such a micro level versus your very high macro level.
No, I think adventure, a couple of things that you folks have said have really stood out on like the sense of adventure, right? Growth really that comes from conquering challenges. Whether that's like a 500-mile walk or like difficult challenges, right? Or conversations that need to be had. Or cats that come on screen.
As they do.
And I think this idea of fulfillment is so interesting, because one thing that I noticed in being a really intense person is that I can get caught up in just escalating expectations, right? So it's almost addictive. Like I was like, I need the next adventure, the next hit of like newness, or not even newness, right? Of challenge. And I think one thing that I think is an antidote to that allows you to still enjoy the adventure is, Jennifer, what you mentioned about fulfillment and purpose. And I think that I love traveling in and of itself, but what has really given me a sense of purpose and impact is being able to connect with what drives me. And it happened to be in a sweat lodge in a pretty hippie festival. But what came to me at one point was this word catalyst. And for me, that is my purpose. It's to be alongside other people's journeys, not as a guide, but as someone who helps create the conditions, the safe space for people to accelerate where they're already going to go. So they're not broken, they don't need to be fixed, but they just need some, safe space to really dive in and explore their own inner wisdom and resources to more quickly get to where they're going. And this manifests itself in several ways. So I'm a kind of an executive leadership life coach. So both for corporate workers and for non-traditional applicants trying to get into graduate school. So two different platforms, very interesting transitional times in both of those groups. I do it as a yoga teacher. So this is something I do as a passion on the side. I'm like a registered yoga teacher, and I'll do it once a year at a whitewater rafting camp in Patagonia, but also just wherever I am, if it's helpful for people around there. And then I run a Burning Man camp now. So from that first time I went, very, very, very innocent. I now, if Burning Man comes back, I run a camp where people can really kind of explore in many different ways. And then I do a lot of queer events for her, which is the world's largest social and dating app for queer women. And for me, coming out later in life, probably in the last 4 or 5 years, that's been a journey that's been exciting and scary. And being able to create events where people feel comfortable expressing themselves and connecting with other people, whether it's in learning how to date in Queer Dating 101, a series that I've produced and reprising in January, or in the articles I've written for the blog. These are all things that I find a lot of purpose in. So it's important to be traveling and stuff, but the ability to do these things and connect are super important. And I guess ultimately, this memoir, The No Plan Plan, is kind of telling that story, my story, but the hope really is that the reader finds kind of that safe space and can relate to certain aspects of my story, and that helps them kind of go where they're headed to and get there faster.
And that's the mark of a well-written book, is exactly what you just said, where it's like people can read your story, but apply it to their own lives and do something differently, or just assess something differently, or any number of different things that are ultimately going to impact impact them. So I love that your word was catalyst. I feel like that seems very, very cool.
What are your folks' words?
Well, we know what our word is from Aaron Weed, right, Jen Grace? What's yours?
Yes. Mine's protect. It's my whole thing. Like everything I do and touch is in an effort to protect people from whatever it is that they may not know that they should know.
Wow, I like it.
You. That's so you. Mine is power. And we're referencing somebody we work with named Aaron Weed, and you go through this whole process called the dig, and you come out with one word.
Yeah.
And
nice.
So power is fascinating to me. Taking my power, owning it as a LGBTQ woman, speaking truth to power, changing power systems, redistributing power. Like there's so much good stuff in there that really animates me. And I love catalyst though. It's such a big word for me too. Sort of the almost like fly in the ointment or the sand in the oyster. Yeah,
exactly. And just kind of that little, it's all the credit goes to the person for their own growth and path, but to be able to help that. And I think as both of you were sharing your words, the thing that really makes a purpose resonate is that you're able to bring your own personal superpowers to it and really supercharge it that way. And I can see for both of you that would be true. So that's really cool. And for me and Catalyst, like I think what I bring to that is I bring humor and authenticity. It's like, let's just be vulnerable and say what things are and laugh about it and, have that safe space to make mistakes and grow and have fun while we do it.
Yeah, we need more of that.
We sure do. And Jenn, I'm over here thinking about the Dark Lord handbook that we have joked about for probably at least 5 years that I can recall at this point. But so Nicole, I have a friend named Monica who dubbed me as the Dark Lord about a decade ago. And she meant it with like loving, like all the love in the world of like, you are a Dark Lord, i.e. you get shit done in the cover of night when no one knows what's happening, but all of a sudden like poof, it's there. And so I have really just like embraced that identity of, like if you say you need something, you don't need to know how it gets done, but it's going to get done and it's going to get done faster than you thought it would. And that's just kind of been my MO for like honestly my entire career, but now I just have this term for it. So we've been joking. So I like anointed Jenn as a Dark Lord. And so we've been anointing other Dark Lords among us for years at this point. And we keep, and Nicole is a Dark Lord, which is why I'm bringing it up. Because you can't bring up a Dark Lord. You can't bring up the Dark Lordship in a conversation with someone unless you also feel like they are part of that tribe. But so now we're anointing you. But we've been saying like we need to have like a Freemason style like handbook that only the Dark Lords have access to, and you can only get one when you are brought in by another Dark Lord. And everything that you're saying is making me think that like maybe that needs to be my pet project for 2021. As if I don't have enough going on today, but like maybe we like really need to resurrect like what would the handbook include? Because I think a lot of the wisdom that you've been talking about, Nicole, 100% wraps into that.
Nice. I feel like it might be a one-page book that just says GSD, period.
Get it done. Maybe that's what it is.
I'm honored. I'm honored, though. Thank you.
And this is the first time we have publicly anointed a Dark Lord. It's usually like behind the scenes, society. Like, ooh, she's a Dark Lord. So I have just gone public with the Dark Lordship, apparently. So here we are.
We're going public, Jen. This means there's some accountability, about this. We
Perhaps.
Have to make it a thing.
Yes. But if it's Freemason style, no one will know whether we've done it or not. So there's that going for us.
I feel like I need to be able to put it on my LinkedIn though for it to
have validity.
To make it real.
As long as there's a logo that I can attach to it. That's
true. That's true.
Yeah. So we have thought about that, like having it be like an icon of somebody like this where you just see their eyes with a cape. Yeah, we really thought this through.
Like Dracula.
Yes, we have. Dracula. Pretty much. I mean, it's a little it's witchy too, right, Jen? It's definitely, it's definitely the cauldron.
Yeah, it's got magic. It's got all the things. It's got the energy, the universe. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do we need wands?
We should have wands. Yes, okay, and they have to make a noise. Yeah. They have to be like something that makes a noise. Okay. All right. So now we have some accoutrements to go with.
Logos and accoutrements, and then we're in.
Obviously, and then we're in, and then we don't need to do anything else. Oh, this was so awesome. This was like just a really good conversation. A great way to at least end our day. Your day is still kind of not even midway through, but it's a nice way to end.
Yeah, it's a great way to go through your midday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole. Tell us, everybody who's intrigued by all things you. I mean, there's a myriad ways to follow you, I know, but where do you want people to go?
Yeah, so my website's down at the bottom, nicoleelim.com or nicole.e.lim on Instagram. And I have a link tree there with all like my writings and things that I'm involved in, live events that I'm doing virtually. Especially if you're curious at all about queer dating, kind of like, how do I do this? I'm frustrated. Definitely check out the recordings of the original one in September are up, and then I'll have information about the free sessions coming up in January. And I think what makes me so excited about doing things like this is that, yes, ostensibly they're about dating, but it's really about self-discovery and learning more about yourself and finding more peace and satisfaction and happiness in your life, kind of independent of whether you actually get that thing you think you really want.
Perfect. That's so good.
So good. Great way to end it.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time as well.
Thank you.
And Jenn, I will see you next week. I believe we're.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, and we'll do an episode at some point where we share like our 2021, like, because we're gonna keep going. Well, there's no reason. COVID's not going anywhere, neither are we. So
you're stuck with